The Musashi Field Manual will help you unlock the power of ancient wisdom from one of the world's greatest warriors, Miyamoto Musashi. Available at stickmanpublications.com.
Welcome to the Martial Arts and Life podcast with Kris Wilder.
One of the things that I've discovered is that everybody is a headline hound. It's kind of a funny little sounding thing, but, a hound is a dog that chases after, an animal that's being hunted. And so, here we are, headline hounds. And it makes sense. I mean, we like to have quick bits of information so that we can sort of digest what we need and move on. And these small digestible bits of news or information, and I don't want to make this about the news. That's not what this is really about, but it sort of is couched in that because it's so pervasive and omnipresent in our world that it just can't help but be that. But I hope that we'll have this be a little bit of a bigger envelope to contain this idea. The idea that we are headline hounds, that means that what we're doing is we're looking for that bite-sized chunk of information that's going to allow us to make a decision and move through the world. And I submit to you that that is a case of intelligent behavior. It is a survival mechanism. It is actually something that we're hardwired to do. If you think about it from a hunter-gatherer predator position, decisions have to be made fairly quickly. Eat this, don't eat that. That mushroom looks like it's good, but it's not because this. Don't attack that animal. It's going to turn out badly for you. Quick recognitions. And those are ones that allow us to move through the maze of life in a very simple sort of binary fashion, a 0 or a 1. Go left, go right, don't, do, yes, no. And those aren't bad things. That's a really good form of intelligence that's necessary for survivability. But it's also a system that can betray you. I think we've all heard stories, whether we've read about them or whether they're true, or we have gone ahead and spoken of it. But, you hear the stories of the scuba diver that drowned and is found with their respirator not in their mouth. The idea is that they can't get oxygen, and their lower brain takes over and pulls the respirator out of their mouth so that they can breathe. And they breathe water and they drown. And that's this betrayal of this system. I called it a binary system, but only because I want to make it simple. The book by Lawrence Gonzalez, Deep Survival, points to a story about a brush fire or forest fire moving up a hill really quickly, and everybody tried to run from it, but one guy turned and ran down the hill through the flames into the burnt area. That was a case of thinking about the situation and what would really bring survivability. Now, you and I'll tell you what, man, I'm running from flames. If I had been in that situation, and I would not have thought to turn and run into the flames, to hold my breath, cover my face, and run as fast and as hard as I could into the flames, down the hill, and into the burnt and charred ground where it's safe. I wouldn't have done that. I would have been like the other men that ran from the fire, because I would have let that part of my brain have complete and total control, because it makes ultimate sense. Now, whether it's the firefighter running back into the flames, or it's the scuba diver, these are methods of thinking quickly or overriding the body's natural tendency to make a decision instantly. And that's why I think it's really important to recognize that the human mind is that headline hound. We, in martial arts, train to control our body, our movements, and we also, through that physical training and sometimes forms of meditation, make a deliberate effort to train our minds as well, so that we have a cohesive package of physical and mental abilities. And of course, then there's, training the big spirit when it needs to be in place. But what are those tools, say that big spirit, that adroit mind, and that physical acumen? What are they if they are applied in an environment where there is no ability to fix, change, or arrest the situation? Well, I would submit that it's some form of frustration, if not fear. If we go back to that scuba diver in the situation of pulling the respirator out of their mouth, they're in a situation that is an environment that is alien. It is not something that they are used to. So the diver's behavior countermands what is really necessary for survival. It's built out of panic, maybe some frustration. I don't know the whole cocktail that goes in there, but you get the idea that it's probably not just one thing, which is probably fear or panic, but there's also other things that are attached to that as well. So a bad choice is made. Well, if I am training my body and I'm training my mind and I'm making my spirit big, and I wind up in a situation where I am not able to use those tools, how am I not experiencing the same thing the diver is experiencing? How am I not actually experiencing a sense of frustration, inability to achieve, or fear? And if I'm experiencing fear, that's tough. Fear's a good thing, don't get me wrong, but fear is a simple 0-1 binary type of emotion. Just like I said, I would have ran from the flames in Lawrence Gonzalez's example. I would have done it, absolutely, and I would be dead. So if I'm in a situation where I have absolutely no control, now not only do I have fear, but I have frustration. And that is a horrible combination. Absolutely horrible. And it does horrible things to your body. It raises the cortisol levels. It burns out the adrenal gland. It does horrible things to the body. Ambient stress held inside the body is a very bad thing. It ages people. It ages them quickly and in a bad way. I'll tell you this story. I remember when my grandmother, who was experiencing Alzheimer's, was living with my parents, and they had decided that they were going to care for her until they couldn't. And so they were going to push it to the very last end. That's what my parents do. That's the kind of people they are. They're committed people. They're responsible. They just, it's like, no, this is our family. We are going to do everything we can do, and just to the best of our ability until we can't. And I remember I hadn't been at my parents' home for probably a good 3 months. I pulled up in the car and I got out in the driveway, and my father had aged. And my mother had aged too. It was significant. The constant stress of having to deal with a 5'6" 4-year-old was just daunting, and it was exhausting. And it absolutely just was expensive physically, emotionally. And so, these kinds of environments can really cause a deep issue with your physicality, how healthy you are, how well you digest your food, the simplest things. So the question becomes, how do I countermand this news hound, this headline hound, this hound that is constantly seeking the wild animal of information that's running through the forest? Here's a couple of tricks that actually break the cycle. You think of it this way. In the martial arts, we often talk about the freeze, and it happens. A freeze can look like just very simply a freeze. I have no ability to move for a moment. The other aspect of it could be to flinch. These are just two examples, the freeze and the flinch. And so then we become sophisticated, and what we do is we graft a movement onto the flinch, making it look like a really good technique, or we take the freeze and we make it as small as we can. It is impossible, and I'm going to tell you, it is impossible to remove the flinch or the freeze from who you are. It just doesn't happen. But you can make them very, very small. You can make them very, very small. If you do the thing where you punch to somebody's face and then, whoa, and they, they're just standing there and they flinch and they move their head, of course, that's what they're going to do. But if they don't move their head, they stand there and you bring the punch within just a quarter inch of their nose or whatever, and they don't flinch, I guarantee you that they flinched internally, maybe very small, but they did. And, it's one of those things, it's like, how small can it be? Well, it can always be smaller because I can always cut it in half, right? I can always make it smaller. But the point is that stuff is hardwired. You just can't stop it, but you can guide it. And here's the way to go about that. I'm going to tell you to use these phrases. Oh, well, I'm going to give them to you. You can choose to use them if you want, or you may even come up with some of your own. And if you do, I would love to hear what they are, because this is not perfect. These are only the tools that work for me. And I'm sure that there are people out there, such as yourself, who may craft something that's even better. And so I want to hear about that. If you've got it, please send it to me. But here's the phrases that you can use to actually create a pause. And they are, just that, a simple hum. The other one is, I don't know that to be true yet. Then there's, well, there might be more to this. Also, let's wait and see. And the other one is, well, I wonder how this is going to play out. All of those leave room for more information, avoid an instant decision, and allow you to entertain alternative resolutions, ideas, and viewpoints. Now, of course, I'm not suggesting that you stand on a hillside during a burning brush fire and go, well, I don't think I have all the information yet. No, that's not what I'm suggesting. What I'm saying is when you have the luxury of time, go ahead and use it. It's there. Pick it up. Make it yours. Just use it. And that's where we spend most of our lives anyway, is having the opportunity and using the time. So use those phrases to create that space and stop your headline hound dog from going absolutely crazy. You know, and I want to come back to this point about we train to control our bodies and to move our minds and, do these things in a deliberate and distinct fashion. And we also train our minds as well. But the question becomes, do we really let our minds slip from our grasp like the hound slips from its leash? The mind is difficult to see. We can see movement, we can hear words, and we can see the results of training our bodies. But it's difficult when we train the mind because it's not necessarily so obvious. So this one simple tool is to create some space in your mind to put that headline hound back on its leash and to actually understand that you have the luxury of time and you're able to approach things from a circumspect perspective, or at least the best that you can do, and to wait and to let things play out and to not jump to conclusions, because jumping to a conclusion can be similar to pulling a respirator out of your mouth while you're still 20 feet underwater, or deciding to run from the flames.
The 87-Fold Path to Being the Best Martial Artist. 87 Social and Psychological Tips for Living Beyond the Physical. A book designed for the martial artist who's seeking the edge to life that exists both inside and outside of the training hall. Read reviews and samples at Amazon.com today.
And now, it's time for We're All in This Together. A bashful young lady in my karate school approached me after class, and she told me that she was running for school treasurer, and there were 5 other people doing the same thing. I said, well, why do you want to be the treasurer? And she said, because I'm good at it. I'm good at math, and I would do a good job for the school. Well, that was fantastic. Good. I like that. What do you have to do? Well, I have to give a speech next week. And I could tell that she was pretty nervous about it. She's not the most gregarious kid. Diligent, pleasant, hardworking, but not the most effusive person on the planet. And I mentioned to her that, well, you look a little nervous. And she smiled and gave me a yes. One of the things that I will do intermittently is I'll ask my students to tell me who their hero is. And you'll get things like Batman or Superman or Russell Wilson, the quarterback for the Seahawks, or some other, Tom Brady. And it's a sports hero or a superhero. The reason that I ask this question is it kind of tells me where the kids are, where they are in their value, what they aspire to be, and how they want to do it. And when I asked this question, she, without hesitation, this young gal went, my dad, and with a grin. And I was like, that's great. And actually, it is a great choice. I've come to know her father, and he is truly a good man. He is caring. He is gentle, generous, and internally, he's as tough as they come. Just a great guy. So the aspiring school treasurer, and I talked a little bit about her speech, how she might structure it. What do you have? How does it sound? Oh, that's great. And we did this for a few moments, and then I could tell that she was actually pretty nervous as she was getting into the breakdown of having to do this speech, stand in front of the school body and tell them why she was the good choice. Her nervous and tense smile kind of underscored the fact. And I said, you're a little nervous about it. And she said, yes, but I'm going to do it. That was it. It was yes, but I'm going to do it. Well, we turned and walked over to her dad, who had overheard our conversation. And I mentioned to her dad, Megan told me about what she's doing, that she's running for this position as school treasurer, and she has to give this speech, and it sounds pretty exciting and quite a challenge. And her dad put his hand on her shoulder and he said, yeah, she's going to do fine. I believe in her. And I said, me too. Well, jump ahead a week, and I asked Megan at the dojo, how did the election go? She says, I lost. And then I said, I'm surprised that you're here. I thought that was going to kill you. And she smiled and shook her head and said, no. Well, that's a great moment in learning for a kid. And it points to a comment that Joseph Campbell, the famous writer and teacher, had said. Campbell, if you're not familiar, he was a professor of literature at Sarah Lawrence College in New York, and he wrote The Power of Myth and did a lot of work on comparative religion. I think he died in 86, 87, something like that. But anyway, one of the things that he said, which is just really right in the wheelhouse of this experience that this young gal had, was Campbell said, the cave you fear to enter holds the treasure you seek. And here's this young gal in the karate class, and I'm hoping that part of being in that class was what instigated her to go ahead and to check her fear, or at least acknowledge it, and step towards the treasure that she sought. And I think it's kind of funny that she wanted to be a treasurer too. So get that part there, treasure. Anyway, that's it for We're All in This Together. I'm Kris Wilder. Thanks for the listen. I hope that you found this episode of Martial Arts and Life to be informative, helpful, and if it has, great. And if you use it, fantastic. And if you'd like to drop me a line, you can do that at kriswilder@kriswilder.com. That's with a K, Kris, Wilder @kriswilder.com. Until next time, be well.